to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be going over some specifics about my small block Chevy Nova here. Since I started this YouTube channel, I've had a lot of specific requests or people asking questions about specifics on the motor, what parts I used in it and stuff like that. So gotten the same with my dad's Camaro as well. It'll have to be two separate videos, which is totally fine, but in this video we'll start with my blown 383 here, and we'll dive into the specifics of the motor and how it came to life, really. So I'll kind of just start with the block and the bottom end and then work our way up. So as you know, everything starts with the block, of course, and with the budget that I was under, I couldn't get a dart block or anything like that. Couldn't get a brand new block. So I had a buddy that had told me that he had a 4-bolt main small block in his garage. I went over and took a look at it. It happened to be the 010 block, which I have heard and have read a little bit about how their material and the amount of iron that's in the block makes them a little bit stronger than some of the other ones. Don't quote me on that. I don't know how totally true that is. Just kind of what I read, and this one happened to be an 010 block. And then from there, basically just sent it off to the machine shop and had it checked out to make sure that there weren't any cracks or anything like that. And what I really recommend doing too when you're going and looking at a block, especially if it's used, is taking your calipers with you. So I wanted to know if the block had been, or the cylinders had been bored before. And this one happened to be the standard 4-inch bore, so I knew that even if there was some scratches in the cylinder walls or something like that, that boring it 30 over or more, if need be, it'd be totally fine to run. We had some material to remove there, so yeah, picked up the block and sent it to the machine shop, and everything turned out good to go. So once I had the go ahead of the machine shop that the block was good, that's where you really need to have a game plan in mind. I already knew that I was wanting a 383, so I knew that we were going to be going 30 over. As we'll get into here in a minute, game plans always don't work out, but yeah, I knew that I was going to be going 30 over, so had the machine shop bore the cylinders out. They put new cam bearings in there, obviously, freeze plugs, wash the whole thing, and they also decked the heads, or the head surface. So from there, had a pretty much clean block ready to go. And for those of you who have watched my videos since the beginning of the channel, know that this motor actually was built for an S10 that I used to own, and that was the game plan that I had at the time. I knew that it was going to be going in this S10, that I wanted to drive it on the street, and that I wanted to do some sort of power adder. At the time, I didn't know if it was going to be nitrous or procharged or supercharged or turbo. I really didn't know, but I knew it was going to be some sort of power adder motor for the street. So when I picked out the rotating assembly, called a bunch of different people, and the best luck that I had with customer service and all that kind of stuff was with Eagle. So it's an Eagle rotating assembly. I have the part number here. Part number B12304030, which is their forged rotating assembly. So it's a forged crank, forged rod, forged piston, internally balanced, so it came all balanced and set up for low compression. So depending on your your chamber size and the heads and all that kind of stuff, mine ended up being 9-to-1 compression. So low compression, I wanted to do that again so I could have a power adder safely, I could run pump gas, all that kind of stuff, and that is the rotating assembly that I put together for this small block Chevy. And just in case you don't know what it means to have a stroker motor, specifically with a small block Chevy, so this is a 350 block. In the stroker rotating assembly comes a 400 crank, which is a bigger crank with more throw. So you have to do the machine work necessary to clearance enough room in the block to have this larger throw of a crank. And then obviously boring the cylinders out a little bit means a slightly larger piston, and that's going to be your bored and stroked motor, 383 from a 350. So I got the rotating assembly put in the motor. That was all good to go, and about that time is when I found the Nova out of Salt Lake and decided that I had to have it, switching up plans. Game plan wasn't going to game plan anymore, and that we were going to buy this, we were going to strictly be drag racing it. Had to sell the S10, which is unfortunate. I'm trying to buy that back. We'll go over more of that later. But anyway, knew that I was going to be strictly drag racing it, but I already had this short block put together that was meant to be low compression. So I knew that definitely was going to have some sort of power adder later on. So bought the Nova, had the rotating assembly already put in the engine. We keep ordering parts from there. So as we move our way up, next you get to the heads, of course. The best bang for the buck that I could find, again in the budget that I was trying to stay in, and again I called a bunch of people, best customer service that I could find of companies wanting to give me information and help out and be nice, all that kind of stuff, was by far Brodix. When I gave them a call, they were interested in hearing what I was doing and recommended a set of heads, and we ended up going with the Iron Killer 200. So it is an aluminum head, 200cc, and I ended up actually going with the larger combustion chamber, the 74cc, 72 or 74cc versus like the 64, I believe, just because if I did want to add more power later, add more boost later, anything like that, that I would have, you know, enough combustion chamber to do so. So hopefully don't have to upgrade heads, you know, if I want to upgrade some things on the motor later on. Next, moving into the valve train and the camshaft is probably where I get the most questions, especially when I post videos online. People wondering what the cam is. If you've ever built a motor before and I really didn't know at the time, you know, this is where you can really get pretty gnarly with the motor, or how crazy you want this thing to be. And for my first build, and knowing that I was going to be drag racing and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to build something that would keep me satisfied, if that makes sense, for a couple of years. Because, you know, as drag racers, we always just want to go faster, but also wasn't going to ruin my experience for the first time. I didn't want something that was going to be having a ton of issues or required a bunch of maintenance and stuff like that. So starting with the camshaft, it is a smaller cam. It's a comp cam, small supercharger, small nitrous shot, basically a small boosted or small nitrous shot type camshaft. It is a 224 intake, 236 exhaust with 113 LSA, and the lobe lift is 3470. So not super big, but again, just was going for reliable. It is a hydraulic roller. It has short travel hydraulic roller lifters, also from Comp Cams in there. And it also has Comp Cams, you know, hydraulic roller rockers and good valve springs and all that kind of stuff as well. So nothing super crazy there, but again, was kind of done on purpose at the time. So before we jump into all the little accessories around it, that's the basics. So 400 crank, all forged internals, H-beam rods. It's the stock stroke, 4-inch stroke rod. A slightly dished forged piston. They're Icon pistons that came with this rotating assembly. 224, 236 cam by Comp Cams, hydraulic roller rockers, short travel lifters, good valve springs, and that's basically the rotating or the long block portion of it. And of course, you have all of your little accessories that you know bolt around the engine. It's got an MSD Pro Billet distributor. It's actually the small diameter one. Again, I purchased that when I had the S10, and there was some clearance issues between the firewall and the motor, so I got the small diameter, which actually works out awesome in this. It gives me a ton of room. It's got an SFI balancer, electric water pump, Mazir starter, won't do anything but Mazir starters, hooker long tube headers. And that's really what I was able to afford there for a little while. With everything else that I had to do with the car, that's in a whole separate video of different things that I had to do to the car and how much I'm into the car total. I recommend you definitely go watch that. I'll put the link here. But I ran it naturally aspirated for a few months. Just had a single plane intake manifold on it, a 650 carburetor, and was going in the low 12s, I believe. Mainly did test and tunes. I didn't get into too much racing. When it was just naturally aspirated, it was more so just kind of getting the bugs shaken out. Was definitely having fun with it, but definitely knew my goal kind of as this thing was coming together is I wanted to be somewhere in the 11s. I'm like, man, if I can build a motor in my garage, you know, if I could put it into the 11s, then I'd be totally happy. So it ran low 12s there for a little while. It's naturally aspirated. saved for a few months and knew, you know, that this thing was specifically built for some sort of power adder, and I started doing a ton of research about what was going to be the most consistent power adder, because the drag racing that we do around here in the Pacific Northwest, specifically Firebird Raceway in Idaho, is typically all bracket racing. There are a few events a year where it's heads up stuff, but so I just wanted something that was going to be consistent, because that's going to be the most kind of racing that I'd be doing. And basically came down to either nitrous, because a lot of guys are starting to use nitrous nowadays, bracket racing, which definitely has its advantages. I decided to go this route with the blower shop supercharger. One, because I kind of like just being boosted and the sound of the supercharger, to be honest with you, and the looks of it, of course, but also the blower shop's right here in Boise, so I knew that the customer service was good. I visited those guys before. If I need anything, they're right there. So it was kind of just the obvious answer. When I bolted this thing on is where everything changed. So like I said, I wanted to go somewhere in the 11s, bolted this on. It came with a quick fuel 950 boost reference carburetor that's still on there. Spec that through the blower shop. They ordered it as a whole package. And bolted this thing on, went out, and I can't remember the time slip exactly, but it went immediately into the 10s. So I was extremely happy, at least for a couple weeks before I completely destroyed a third member. Just found the next weak link, which is always the case in drag racing. You're gonna upgrade things and then find the next weak link and you upgrade it, and it's just the constant thing. But yeah, couldn't be happier. I think my personal best is a 1079, somewhere right in there, a low 680 in the 8th mile up, and that's obviously in the spring and fall when the air is good. A lot of times here at Firebird, we're like last weekend it was 107 and the density altitude was over 6,700 feet. So not running as quick right now, but definitely this thing definitely screams in the spring and fall time. Of course, with any build, when you look back at it, there are definitely things that I would do different. You know, I think if I knew that I was going to be just drag racing and having the Nova, I probably would have went a little higher compression. And stuff like that, but it's totally lived up to what I wanted it to do. It's low maintenance, change the oil, check the valves every now and again, new spark plugs, and the thing just runs. Like I said, it's competitive. If I can get myself figured out on the tree, it'll be more competitive. Have won a couple events with it, so totally happy. For my first build, wanting simplicity, not really wanting to dig into the EFI thing yet, wanting it to be consistent. You know, a small block Chevy platform is hard to beat in my opinion. There's a million ways to build these things, and I am probably the furthest thing from an expert, but basically just thought I would share what's working for me, and has been really reliable and consistent, like I said. So yeah, you guys have asked about details, the motor and what's in it, and those sorts of things, so hopefully I was able to answer some of your questions there. If you do have any other questions about different parts around it or whatever, just shoot me a comment and I'll answer those. And yeah, we'll do another video with my dad's Camaro, because his is definitely another level big block Chevy build, but again, all built by us here, so I can really dig down into what we did and why. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to comment, and I'll answer all of those. And as always, appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and following along. And until the next video, we'll catch you guys later.